Appreciate you doing this, Dave. And like I said, we're just he Ryan and I are just learning from people that we know or run across. And from my time with you a few weeks ago, oh gosh, it's been longer than that now. I don't know, time's flying. Uh, just yeah, I just feel like you have a lot to share, a lot of experience, and our heart is certainly learning ourselves, but we just feel like it's a lot of wisdom to learn from ministry leaders out there. So really,
Yeah.
just starting. I mean, hey, just give us I always, that bio is always I think, an intimidating thing, but your ministry context, like where you're serving, and maybe even just a broad overview of like your what got you here, your ministry experience.
Yeah. So I currently serve as a lead pastor at Journey Christian Church here in Wayne, Nebraska, and just been in ministry for about 30 years. After graduating from Minnesota Bible College and Lincoln Christian Seminary, just been pastoring around the Midwest. During seminary, worked at a small church in Southern Illinois, and then for a long time in Janesville, Wisconsin, followed by Council Bluffs, Iowa. And I should say that I grew up in Minnesota, and growing up in Minnesota, we always made fun of Iowa and told Iowa jokes. And then God led us to Iowa, and like, oh, thanks a lot. But we spent about 13 years or so in Council Bluffs, Iowa, um, before coming here to Wayne. And we've been at Wayne just a little over 4 years now, and just loving the ministry here, and loving the community. So,
That's awesome. What's an Iowa joke? I'm interested.
in Rochester, where I grew up, just I guess it's not a joke, but we stereotyped Iowa drivers, and Rochester has a lot of one-way streets, and a lot of people come there for the Mayo Clinic. And whenever there was somebody going down the wrong way on a one-way street, we would always, make a comment that it was an Iowa driver. There's something like that.
That's a good one. Um, yeah, so like Doug said, we really just want to learn ourselves and provide content for other people. As I kind of just looked over, I don't want to call it like, Facebook stalked you, looked at the website, that sort of thing. The word that I think of is just legacy. Um,
Mm.
and just like leading for over 3 decades, right? 33 years, something like that, that you've been doing ministry in some capacity. So how has your view of what faithful leadership looks like evolved through all of those different seasons, from being like young married, having kids? How has faithful leadership kind of evolved in your mind?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ryan. And I think for me, just learning to minister in the capacity and in the way that God made me. If I want to leave a legacy, I need to be just, I guess, okay with how God wired me. And by that I mean, like, early in my ministry, I wanted to imitate like my Bible college professors. I wanted to be like my seminary professors, or just other lead pastors that I looked at and would think that, oh, that they had arrived. Um, but as I got older, I just realized that, yeah, I have my own unique set of abilities and talents and gifts, and just learning to step into those and be okay with those, has really just freed up so much of my ministry, where I can focus on, yeah, I just want to, pour into people now, and hopefully leave that positive legacy of ministry.
Dave, do you have uh, does someone come to mind for you when you think about people who have poured into you?
Yeah, early on, I did have some great mentors in college and in seminary. But even in those early years of ministry, there's been some key families in each of the churches that we served at, that have really kind of taken us under their wing and just welcomed us into our family. because we've never been like super close to our own immediate families. So with each ministry, especially when our children were young, we had like adopted grandparents that would just make us feel welcome and belonging, and that just meant a lot to us. And just their example of just Christ-like love and acceptance and that family atmosphere just really meant a lot to us over the years and in each of our ministries.
It's a beautiful picture of the church. I really love that, and I know and recognize that not everybody has that experience. Do you do you feel like that, or how has that maybe shaped even how you lead where you're at there in Wayne?
Yeah, so I look back at some of those what I thought were older couples from when in our early ministry, which I look back now I'm older than they were, but just the example of just mentoring that they gave me, and just being an example of what a Christian family looks like, and a Christian Christ centered home and husband and wife. It's like now I'm looking for those opportunities here in Wayne where I could potentially do that for not just younger staff, but for other couples within the church. So I guess I'm more aware of that and just how much it meant to us, and I want to be able to kind of replicate that with younger couples or younger families here in our church community.
Uh, Sticking along that theme of the legacy, you talked about like, and I think we all can relate to like being young. And I don't know if you know this name, but like I wanted to be like Mark Moore, right? Like out of college,
Yeah.
I
Yep.
wanted
Yep.
to like CIY conferences and like just that was the dream, right? Like I was going to take a youth ministry job, then take a small ministry job, and now I'm at a church in the country, and I just can't imagine leaving, right? Like I just can't
Yep.
bury me. So it
Well,
definitely,
but Ryan, you have hair, so Dave and I are closer to Mark Moore than you are. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's really
Exactly.
yeah, I guess for now, right? But what uh I guess like I love what you're saying. How did you get there though? Like were there things that happened with your family where you realized you were kind of veering off or trying too hard? Or are there moments where you were like, these were the things that kind of got me to the place where I was okay being like I was just okay being Dave?
Yeah. I guess that was a long path and a difficult path in the sense of I had to come to terms with my own faults and failures, and I realized the hard way that I can't be like these other guys or these other lead pastors that I emulated, and just through some hard seasons of ministry that I realized that God needed to work on things in my heart and my life first, before He can really, I guess, just minister through me in the way that He created me. So a lot of it was just kind of confronting, just issues that I'd buried for years, things that I was hoping that would go away, and just being honest with who I am, and just opening up with that, not only with myself, but with my wife, and just through the help of her and some counselors, just I think was able to get to a healthy place. And ever since then, I mean, ministry has been a joy instead of like it always felt like a labor, because I was trying to do and be something that I wasn't.
Yeah, so I want to poke the bear a tad because I think health, Doug and I have had lots of conversations around health.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
really just thought of as like physical health, which is by far part of it. Um, but what I guess you said some things helped you. What did unhealthy look like for you? And what does healthy look like for you as a pastor?
yeah. Um, just to be honest, during that difficult season of ministry, I was struggling with depression. I was just struggling with just my own like value, how can I contribute, because I had this idea in my own head, but also like this expectation um, from the lead pastor I was working with, of that I needed to produce and I needed to be a high capacity leader, but inside I was like a wreck. I was falling apart, and I needed to work on that and just allow God to work on that. So I went through a long season of counseling, both myself, but also together with my wife. And through that season of just working with my own mental health, um, man, I came out so much stronger in my marriage, in my ministry. And that really was the turning point for my ministry becoming a joy and a healthy place. So when I came here to Wayne, I mean, that was probably 10, 12 years ago now that I was able to make that shift and get to a healthy place. So now, like I said, here at Wayne, I'm loving ministry, because God was able to work through some of those struggles that I had in my past. So
What do you what do you do now when you start to feel like you're going that way or that old self is coming back? Are there habits that you formed or like renewal techniques that have been beneficial that might help somebody else?
yeah, that's a great question. When I was in that place before, like physical exercise in my life was non-existent. Um, and since that time, I've been really intentional about exercise. Now, here in Wayne, we have this awesome walking trail that goes around our whole community. And I spend a lot of time walking on that trail. And that's not just for physical exercise, but it's also a great prayer time. So I try to get outside. I exercise, and then my wife, Dory, and I have just learned to be very open with each other and talking about not only our joys, but our struggles. And the favorite part of my day is each morning we just spend a little couch time together, before we go to before we get ready for work and go our separate ways. So that time is just an opportunity to connect, to be open, to talk, and we pray together. And that's for me the highlight of my day is just praying with my wife, kind of praying for our family, for our ministry, for the day, and then it just puts me in a great place to do ministry. So I just think that focus on my physical health, and just learning to be open with my wife, and that has really helped a lot, honestly.
That's so cool. I love that. I love that practice you have of starting the day. What'd you call it? Couch time?
Couch time. Yep.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the way our couch sits in our living room, we have a large picture window, so we just look out the window, and sometimes our conversations are deep. Other times it's just chatting about the schedule, or what our kids are doing. And sometimes it's 10 minutes, sometimes it's 40 minutes. Just depends on how the day goes. But we always try to wrap it up with that prayer time. To me, that
Mm.
just means a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. Do you have, um, well, I think what I'm asking is how is that then your experience and what you went through before? How is that informing how you lead your staff? You have a few people there that are on staff as well as, of course, congregation, but then volunteer ministry leaders as well.
Yeah, so I guess I've learned the hard way of how not to be a church leader. So I've taken kind of that school of hard knocks, and so I really emphasize and focus on like having a healthy staff and a healthy work environment. So like one of my biggest joys and one of my biggest, I guess, what I'm really intentional at trying to mentor and disciple our staff, and not
Mm.
just look at them as, I want you to get a job done, but I want to pour into them and keep them healthy, because I know from my own experience that when I wasn't healthy, my ministry was awful. So I check in with them. I want to know how they're doing personally, first and foremost, before I ever talk about ministry events or responsibilities. I guess I want to be the leader that I didn't always have in my previous ministries.
Yeah, that's huge. Um, just even the simple fact of checking in with how they're doing. Yeah, you said
Yeah,
something earlier that it really resonates with me. You know, with that feeling of needing to produce,
yeah, yeah.
and and yeah,
So
we
there's sometimes, we're in the leadership circles, we talk about high capacity leaders, but that's just code for I want this person to get a lot done, you know. and
that's
and
right.
if you're not producing at that high capacity leader, all of a sudden, you can feel less than or not a valued member of the team, and yeah, we of course we want our staff, or we want people to do the work that's, I guess, expected, but more importantly, I want to know how they're doing in their walk in their own faith. So each year, we don't do an annual review. I call it an annual conversation, and it's
Ah,
more along the lines of just how you are doing. So I give them questions ahead of time. It's like, here's what I'm going to ask you, and I think one or two are about their job, and the rest are like, how are you doing? How's your family life? What are your spiritual rhythms? Because I know if those are off base, then their ministry is going to flounder as well.
that's such a gift to them, and I imagine I can't. I mean, I know that then overflows into the people that they're leading,
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
that's a gift to the church. I know something that stuck with me over the last few years has just been this uh, truth reality, that God cares more about who you are than what you do, even
yeah,
though we and sometimes maybe it, I guess generalizing, us men definitely go there a lot. That
yeah,
it's what we produce, what we do, right? And uh, so I guess what I'm really saying is how most people would say that, and yet so often it's so easy to fall into a trap, a way of leading, a way of doing that communicates the opposite, right?
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I think you're right, Doug. That our default mode is to produce, and if we can't show like tangible, here's what I did today, or here's the things that I produced, that then we might feel less than.
yeah,
So probably, my biggest challenge sometimes is when I take a day off, is just to take a day off and not feel like I have to produce anything, you know. So on my days off, hey, it's like I'm going to read a book for fun, or I'm just gonna take a longer walk than what I normally do, and just enjoy some downtime. But man, it sometimes it's hard to actually like force yourself to take downtime, you know.
yeah, yeah.
But
Oh
but I
yeah.
I know when I do that, when I get back to work, I'm more productive.
What's your rhythm of a day off for you? Where's like when is it? I guess what I'm asking. What day of the week?
Yeah, typically I take Fridays off,
Okay.
and um, I mean, if I have a day free, and I'm a reader, so I love to read. Um, I studied history, so like my favorite thing is and I'll read a history book for fun. I know that sounds weird, but I do enjoy it. Right now, I'm reading a new biography on Mark Twain by Ron Chernow, which has been a lot of fun. But I also read some fiction. And as I mentioned already, just going for walks if the weather's nice. During the winter, I'll go to our local gym and walk on the treadmill. But man, if it's nice like this, I'm outside walking. So those are the things that help me unwind. Um, and when I have free time, when I take the days off, man, that's what I do. You know.
That's awesome. Do you have uh do you have like books particularly history, but any or even fiction that you find yourself referring to or recommending, or you kind of tend to like, oh, maybe it's your favorite, I guess.
Oh man, I'm kind of all over the place on history, but probably what I read most of, and this goes back to like when I first learned about Ernest Shackleton and his endurance voyage in Antarctica way back. I like fell in love with Arctic exploration. So I know that's kind of a small niche, but I read about everything I can find on Arctic and Antarctic exploration. So it's kind of fun. I think growing up in Minnesota, I loved being outside in the winter. Would ski a lot or snowshoe, winter camp. So that just kind of I've always been intrigued by that.
That's awesome. I love it. I love those little niches or whatever we get into. Y- do you find yourself referencing that in messages and
Yep,
conversations?
yep. I do, and people are like, "What?" So I always got to like set it up and explain it, and then, but yeah, like I shared that with my staff a while ago that because I think we did strength finders together, and my number one is contact, which is all about history. So I shared with them my love for history, but a specific history, and it gets even more narrow, and I just felt like I got the deer in the headlight look when I told them that. They're like, "You do what?" It's like, but that's what I do for fun.
So I've been to Minnesota once, um, and this is my experience. I flew in, went to the Mall of America with my kids, stayed in a hotel, and flew home. But I don't think I saw Minnesota. So
Right, right.
if I wanted to get into Arctic exploration, I wanted to like read like one book because I just am that guy. I'm like I like to try different things. Like, what's the book that's not going to cover it all, but it's going to be like a good beginner's guide to that niche?
Well, I think a popular place and a great story is Caroline Alexander's book on Shackleton's journey to Antarctica. It's just called Endurance. Um, and what's great about that is Shackleton brought a photographer with him, and the photographer saved all of the film. So there's some just great images and great pictures of it. So that would be like the one book if you want to get Antarctic exploration under your belt. Start there, and then based on that, man, you can go a lot of different directions with it.
So what is I'm Doug knows me. Now I'm getting on my like weird stuff. So you preach a lot over I mean most of the time?
Yeah. Um, no, we have a preaching team, so I preach probably 2 to 3 times a month.
Okay. So when you think of like cuz for me, I'm a music lover, like I love to read as well. Whenever like to me, I'm always trying to view things through the lens of like where is God in this? Not in like a
Mm.
pantheistic way, but just like this all the stories are his. So you're talking about this exploration. Where do you see, as you read that stuff, where does that take you in your walk with God and the Father and the adventure of following Jesus?
Yeah, I think like an overarching theme reading these stories is just an incredible resolve not to quit. These guys are go through incredible hardships for different motives. Some want fame and glory and money. Others just want to be able to say, "I was the first person to make it to the North Pole or the South Pole." But just that intentionality, that just resolve not to give up, and the guys that were successful just um, they 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 did all the planning and pre work ahead of time, and they were able to try new things. Um, like here's a classic example. Scott, last name is Scott, was a English explorer trying to get to the North Pole, and he did it. His methodology was the old English way, where the men would physically drag their sleds and all of their gear themselves. They would hook them up in the front of these giant sledges and pull them. And at the same time, there's a Norwegian, Roald Amundsen, who was also going for the North Pole. But Roald Amundsen, he trained ahead of time in Arctic regions. He used skis and dog sleds to get there, and to him it was so much easier. And he made it where Scott lost his life trying to get there and back. So there's an example of like pride kept him from doing different methodology and new things, whereas Amundsen was able to yeah, be a little more innovative and planning and intentional. And he made it and made it back. So yeah, just stuff like that. I read that. It's like, man, I want to be like those guys, just intentional and just this resolve not to quit.
Well, you haven't quit, and I'm sure that you have moments where you wanted to, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, how vulnerable could you be about, like, is there a season where you wanted to, like, in your mind or in, give up? Like, what was it that God used to build that resolve in you? Because I mean, the amount of length of your ministry, that's unheard of, right? I mean, that's just not normal. Most youth ministers
Yeah.
last 3 years or less, and then they don't go into ministry again, right? So,
Mhm.
how have you endured, or what's been God's way of keeping you on the journey?
I mean, to be honest, around 2012, 2013, that was when I was going through my hardest season of ministry. Um, and, I was struggling with some mental health and some depression, and I was angry at God. I was angry at ministry. I was like, God, this isn't what I signed up for. Why did you put me here? Why am I struggling through that? Um, but I think that the turning point was for me was that even though I was in a rough place, my love for Jesus didn't change. And I just remember one day just coming to that realization. It's like, yeah, I'm not healthy, but I still love Jesus. And if I still love Jesus, he can still use me in ministry. So that kept me from, I guess that gave me that resolve not to walk away from my faith. Even though I wanted to walk away from ministry at different points, but I knew I wasn't going to walk away from my faith. And then I was, through some proactive steps, I was able to come out of that season in a healthy place and be involved in some healthy ministries. Um, and now I think I'm just light years ahead of, I guess, my effectiveness in ministry because I went through that rough patch and rough season.
Yeah, I love the what you said. If I still love Jesus, He can still use me. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, that's cool. That's a beautiful
Mm.
line. Um, let's talk about your family a bit. How many
Yeah,
kids do you have? Grandkids?
yeah. Two adult children. Our son Josh just lives fairly close to here. He's a music teacher in a community called Windside, and they're expecting their first child in December 13th, the due date. And then our daughter is actually married to a pastor, and they live in Southwest Iowa, and they have two children, two granddaughters for us. One's 2.5, the other one just turned one this week. So it, they're both involved in the local church. When our daughter was getting engaged to Matt, our son-in-law, and he was a pastor, and he kept asking our daughter, "Are you sure you want to marry a pastor?" Because growing up a PK, it's like she's seen it all. But it's fun seeing her um, like develop her own ministry and being a good mom and balancing family with church ministry. That's been really cool, and just watching our son to develop and grow as a man of God and becoming now a godly husband and having a Christ-centered home. That's just brings a lot of joy in my life because when you raise kids and you send them off to college, you know, you never know how it's going to go. You know, you do your best as a parent, and when they leave home, you just pray a lot and trust that you laid a good foundation for them, and so far so good.
Yeah, that's good. It is uh becoming, it's been a, a couple of years there for you, but becoming a grandparent is as great as everyone says.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it's a true joy, and it's my kids like are amazed at how much joy we have with our kids because it's like we can play with them, we can have fun, and then give them back to mom and dad. You know, so our role is just to play and have fun, and all the responsibilities or the holding them accountable. We'll leave that to mom and dad, and whenever we do get together, I just sit on the floor and play and have a great time. So it has made being a parent definitely worth it.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
you find yourself like in this season of ministry, and don't, I'm not saying, old, but I
No,
am
no,
saying
right, right.
you've been around a while. I'm there. But do you find yourself struggling or a disconnect from younger generations? And then how are you like, because you're communicating to all ages on Sunday morning. I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
understand. So how are you staying connected, or yeah, how's that for you?
Yeah, that's a great question, Doug. So here in Wayne, we're the home of Wayne State College. So there's a lot of college age students that come to Journey Christian Church. We have a
Mm,
vibrant college ministry. So I have the opportunity to rub shoulders a lot with that 18 to 24 ish range. And I love it, honestly. And what I'm finding is that a lot of those students want to be connected with the older generation.
mm,
Um, because when I first got here, I wasn't sure what that would look like because I wasn't around college students that often. Um, but when I got here, I just started discipling and mentoring a student at the time who was a junior, and just was able to spend time with him until he graduated. And now, we have students a part of just a very active part of our ministry here. So they're on our praise team. They're doing work with our children's ministry. That they're helping out in a lot of different ways. So to me, it's one of the highlights of my ministry here is just to be a part of that and to be able to sit down with them for lunch. I'm out each week. I'm meeting with a couple of students, taking them out for lunch or meeting them for coffee, and just checking in with them on what God is doing in their life. So yeah, I'm loving that aspect of being here in Wayne.
oh, that's great. And I think you're absolutely right that particularly that generation you're speaking to, the college age, is they're hungry for mentors, for older
Yeah,
men and women to pour into their life. Uh, and it can be intimidating. I think it's intimidating for people to, even if they know that, to like try to pursue that because people get insecure and feeling like, oh, I can't connect or I don't know. But what you just said there,
right.
rubbing shoulders with them, I mean, that's huge. From prior conversations, Dave, you and I know that you do have a heart for discipleship. So
Yeah.
how have you brought that passion or that heart? I mean, you mentioned some things that practically you're doing, but like, I like you to speak more to that. Like, what have you done at your church?
Yeah, there's a couple things that we do here very intentionally. One, we started a ministry residency program where like some of these college students have expressed interest in ministry, but they might have a business management major, but they love Jesus. They want to be involved in a local church. So one of the things that I started not long after getting here is just inviting these students into a year-long residency where they can explore different aspects of church ministry. They get the behind the scenes look. They sit in on our staff meetings. We give them kind of ever increasing responsibilities, and and oversight of different ministries. We've had people, residents in the area of worship, um, digital media and social media, children's ministry, um, high school ministry, and they've all, man, it's been, I think I've gotten more out of it myself than what I've poured into the residents. And each one has, I guess I've learned a lot in a sense. When I started doing this, I thought it'd be like one residency would encompass everybody. But what I've learned is that each one has been unique, and we've kind of custom made each residency for each person. And that's just one more way that I get to mentor and disciple some of these younger students that want to explore what ministry looks like. So I guess that's the more formal aspect of it. But we also do something that we call D groups, or disciple making groups, and those are smaller groups of 3 to 5, same gender, men and women, who meet weekly and make a commitment for, again, a year, where you're going to just walk through some scripture together. We meet for an hour once a week and just use the Discovery Bible Study approach to our Bible study, reading, basically a chapter a week, and then we just ask the questions of, what are you learning about God or Jesus? What are you learning about ourselves, and what are you going to do about it? How does this change your life? And then at the end, the expectation is that you then go do this with somebody else. And I think that's been the challenge for these guys that I've been doing it to, because for so long they have been, just coming to church to soak in, and I'm just trying to change the paradigm and just let them know that everybody can be a disciple maker. You don't have to have a Bible college or seminary degree. So we just model it together for a year. Like my D group, for example, right now, the last year we've been reading through the New Testament, and we're going to wrap up in September. So in the last few times, we've already had the discussions, and I just reminded them. I was like, okay, come September, I want you to take this and go do this with somebody else. So that's been a lot of fun, seeing these different D groups form and shape and multiply. And that was something that was close to my heart from the beginning. Even like in the interview process here, I was like, talked about making disciples versus just information model of church. So that's been a paradigm shift, but it's been a lot of fun for us to do as well.
I think it's cool. You said the residency, you got more out of it than you felt like even they were. Uh, but I think that's even in what you're speaking to, the practical of the D groups. It's yeah, when it's something that you're passionate about, it's not work. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
feeding you. Yeah. And I think that that's so beautiful because I think a lot of people, not just ministry leaders, but just like you're trying to pour into people who then pour into other people, they miss that, right? If all you ever do is consume and you're never giving back in some way, then yeah, it's not healthy and it doesn't feel very good. uh,
Yeah. So a lot of these guys themselves have never been discipled, so they don't know what it looks like. So it's like intimidating that, I'm asking them to disciple somebody, but we spend a year modeling it and doing it, and then they realize, okay, it's not rocket science, you know, and you don't have to parse Greek verbs to do it. It's just like let's look at scripture together.
yeah, yeah, and what you said really is two things to really highlight is, you're kind of keeping it simple, right? Like with the structure,
Right,
meeting is not complicated. I think we yeah, tend to overcomplicate it. I do anyway.
right,
Uh, but then the other piece, which is probably even bigger, is that you're modeling it like long before you're doing it. You're doing a D group, but you've been doing something like this, beyond just a structure. So uh,
yeah,
that
yeah.
that's do you have anybody or a story that comes to mind out of either residency or the D groups that you're like would be someone that you would highlight as far as, I don't want to say success, but you know what I'm saying? Like this is an impact that was made through this.
Yeah, each D group that I've done now is, they take on a life of their own. That they've all been different, and one of my early ones, we were at this point where it's like, man, just I didn't feel like we were connecting as a group, and it just seemed like a struggle, and the discussions were kind of shallow, and I went to the meeting this one time thinking, okay, I'm just gonna, we're just gonna wrap it up early, and we're gonna call it, and let the guys move on. But it was that that day that one guy just like opened up about his marriage, his life, and just poured it all on the table. And then God just reminded me, like, this is why we do D groups, because that probably wouldn't have happened in a Sunday school setting or a life group setting. But it was three of us guys sitting around, and we've been meeting for months, and he felt comfortable enough to talk about his marriage. So that just reminded me, like, this is a safe place to have those conversations, and it's a safe place to, allow Scripture to speak into them. Yeah.
Um, I like asking people because you touched on like productivity, high capacity, which I mean, none of us would disagree that we need to be effective and strategic and all of those things. But sometimes uh, John A. Cuff wrote a book called, I think it was called Quitter. And he talked about how there's a lot of things that we should actually quit doing. And
Mm.
that actually makes way for us to be able to say yes to better things. And Jim Collins, Good to Great, Craig Rochelle talks about saying no to things that are good so you can say yes to things that are better. I mean, just that principle of like, how do you pick and choose? So I guess personally for you, what's something that you need to quit and what's something that you need to start?
You talking for the like here at the ministry or my own life?
Just like in general, if you were like, I should probably quit, not saying like quit your job or quit, but like habit or like even a mindset, right? It could even just be like a something. It's like I just need to quit doing this. Um,
Well, I guess one way I can answer that question, and this might not be um, what you're looking for, but when I first got here, I had to say no to a lot of like ministry requests for, say, a traditional Sunday school model, or if somebody wanted to do like a deep Bible study, and that was when I was really trying to talk about disciple making. So I would intentionally say no to those models because I knew that they weren't necessarily always effective at producing disciples. Um, and I've been here long enough where those requests have stopped. But for the first few years, it's like, hey, when are we going to start this? Or we really need this. It was just part of that paradigm shift of moving towards more of a disciple making model. So I had to say no to that quite a bit at the early stage, and that allowed me the margin and the time to personally pour into and do the D group model myself, because I've been doing it from day one that I got here, and then our staff are doing it, and now other people are doing it, and so I'm seeing the fruit of that. But it started with saying no a lot to different requests and stuff.
yeah, no, that's exactly what I'm saying. Like I think because the traditional Sunday school class model isn't evil, it's not terrible.
Right, right.
Value in it, but in order for you to be the most effective, people don't realize how much most pastors put into their prep. So, like, if
Yeah,
you're doing a 1 hour class once a week, it's not a 1 hour of your job.
right,
And
right.
you've got to say no to something else because you've got a whole nother study you have to be in.
Yep.
Uh, so,
And
I,
and I know, like for me doing the residencies and the D groups, um, that involves me like one on one with people, taking the time to be with people, and I'd much rather mentor and disciple in that way than teaching an academic lesson, or doing a more information based model.
And I think that's a mind shift you probably had to make at some point too, because let's be honest, spending a year with 3 people, you're putting a lot of trust in that process. Like
Yeah, yeah,
you're investing a lot in people that may or may not, duplicate it.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. That's exactly right. It's a risk every time you do it. But we talk about that reproduction expectancy at the very beginning, um, and and I know that not everybody's going to take it and run with it. But if I can have a handful of the guys that do it, then we'll begin to see that exponential growth.
Yep, love it.
So just kind of as we look towards the uh, just the end of our time here, actually, I had a couple things here, David. You take the time you need for them. Um, I know, again from kind of previous conversations, like just prior to this, you were doing a different ministry, more in development and fundraising. So what called you? What called you back to located ministry, preaching ministry, the church ministry?
Yeah, yeah. So after that rough season of ministry, I stepped out of church ministry and did nonprofit ministry as fundraising and development. So my job was like church relations, which I think you can relate to, Doug. So I would travel literally like California to Virginia, Minnesota to Texas, visiting churches, um, talking about the ministry. And that was really a healing time for me because I got to uh, visit churches of 30 people or 300 people or 1,000 people. And it allowed me to see that God can do great things with small rural churches as well as larger mega churches. And it got me excited again about the local church and what God can do in it and is doing through it. Um, and the more I saw how God was working, and it got me just excited again about what the purpose of the local church is, and that God hasn't given up on it yet. But also, it began to stir in me that desire to be a disciple maker. And in that role I had, I was on the road all the time in different churches every week. And I just really longed for an opportunity to pour into the same people over a consistent period of time, and really disciple and shepherd in a local church context. So that really began me thinking, it's like, I would welcome an opportunity to get back into a local church setting. Um, and I think God really orchestrated it for us to come to Wayne. I learned that the previous pastor here was making a transition out, so I sent a text to the one guy that I knew here. Just and we knew each other through ministry circles, and sent him a text, said something like, "Hey, I heard your pastor's leaving. Will you be looking for another one?" And he immediately texted back and said, "Why are you interested?" Question mark. And I come to find out that he was chairing the pastor search teams. So he immediately asked me to send a resume. That began the whole process of interview and stuff, and us making the move here to Wayne back in 2021. So, and it's allowed me to do exactly what I was hoping for and praying
Mm.
for, just be an intentional disciple maker, um, and allow me to be a communicator, to teach God's word, and just making disciple making my whole focus of ministry.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you then just kind of these are kind of disconnected questions here, but ones that I still wanted to ask you. Do you have, like, I know you mentioned a few things, but do you have other hobbies maybe that you haven't mentioned? Do you have like a dog sled with huskies in your backyard right now,
I
or at the
wish,
church?
I wish. Yeah, yeah. If I still lived in Minnesota, I might have a dog sled team. No, I think just what I mentioned. My hobbies are reading, going for walks. Those are the things that help me unwind, and those are the things that I do, and when I take my day off. Yeah.
Yeah. What are you or what have you learned from about Mark Twain that has been I don't know, impactful, or maybe you're kind of carrying it with you, or you find yourself using it as an illustration, something.
Well, I'm only about 25% into the
Oh,
biography, and it's a 1,000-page tome. So
man.
he is a guy that what I've learned so far is he wanted to be in the spotlight. He wanted attention, even in his young days growing up in Hannibal, Missouri. And he did some pretty not wise things in his early days
Mm,
because of that. Um, and I guess one of the ministry parallels is that it took him time to kind of find his voice in writing.
mm.
He had to spend time as a journalist in different places, writing different kinds of stories. And it wasn't until midlife that he was able to kind of become the Mark Twain that we know. So I guess I'm reading that. I'm like, oh, there's still hope. That you can still find your voice in midlife or late life. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's great. In fact, I mean, I've read a few uh, authors that basically are saying that it actually isn't until you are in your 40s and 50s, 60s that you actually do find your voice, your real voice, right? Like
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
until then, you're doing all this other stuff. But
Yep.
so
Yep.
so that's pretty cool to hear you. Anyway, just hear that reflected in his life. I kind of asked this specifically about history, but I'm just on a broad because I'm also a reader. Ryan's a reader. What do you find yourself recommending the most as far as books for people to read? And you can apply it to the residency if you want, or just in general. What do or just your top books that you love?
Oh, that's a great question, and I was afraid you were going to ask me that question because I don't, that there's off the top of my head that there's not one that's a go-to book for me. I guess. Yeah, I would have to give that question some thought. I mean, there's been some books over time in my ministry that have been impactful, um, but
Yeah.
not one off the top of my head that's like, oh, you got to read this. Yeah.
Sure. So what about like in the last year or recently that you've read that you're like, oh, this is a good book, and this would be a one that I'll, likely recommend.
So it's a history book that
Mhm.
that I landed on. Just I'm not even sure how I found it, but it's the story of a guy. Here's another example of it. You can still do great things late in life. Um, but he was a competitive walker, and he walked from New York City to San Francisco in 30 days. And this was like in 1902, something like that. And he was just this guy that would literally walk 50, 70 miles a day, sleep for 4 hours, and get up and do it again and again and again. And I just read that book, and it's this quirky little book, short thing. I'm like, man, and he wanted to do it because he wanted to show that you can still do great things late in life, you know. Um, so that was one I've read this year that I really enjoyed. Um,
What's the name of that book? You remember off the top of your
um,
head?
I could tell you in a second. Um, so I kind of go back and forth between fiction and nonfiction.
Yeah.
Um, and let's see that one. It's called Walk of Ages,
Hmm.
Edward Payson Weston's Extraordinary 1909 Walk. And it was written by a sports writer named Jim Reisler. It's a fun read. Just yeah, if you're looking for something to take your mind off of it, off of ministry, that's a
Yeah.
good one. And another one I read this year that I felt was really good. It's called Destiny of the Republic by Candace Millard. It's the story of the assassination um, of, uh, of James Garfield, and just
Mm,
how pride and hubris got in the way of treating him effectively.
mm.
Um, just yeah, just one of those things, one of those events in history that make you go, huh? What? Why didn't people make the right decisions at that time? I also like reading Tolkien, Lord of the Rings
Mhm.
stuff. So I read biography on him this year by Humphrey Carpenter. That was really good, and just again reminded me that Tolkien was a pretty ordinary guy that was really a slow writer, and it drove his publishers nuts. Um, but just a guy that with an incredible imagination that created this language first that needed a world to fit it, and that's where the Lord of the Rings came from. Yeah.
Right. That's awesome.
So, yeah.
What it
So probably one of the best nonfiction books or fiction books rather I read this year is a really tiny one called Small Things Like These by Claire
Hmm.
Keegan. And that's a short read. It's just a little over 100 pages, and I think they just made it into a movie.
Hmm.
But if you want to be impacted by a fiction story and you can read it in like one or two sittings, check out Small Things Like These.
Awesome.
what are I like asking people, like, what are you reading, which we've done. What are you watching and what are you listening to? So what is
Oh,
what is some
so so the podcast that I love goes along with my love for exploration and stuff like that. So it's called the Explorers Podcast, and he covers all kinds of historical explorers, and usually in kind of long form podcasts. So he'll do 5 or 6 episodes on an individual. So that's one I go to repeatedly to learn from. Um, so I'd recommend that if you like history and like the history of exploration, is the Explorers Podcast. Um, what I'm watching, honestly, I don't watch a lot of TV, but when I do watch, it's usually documentaries of some kind, just because I like to learn. So if it's got some good history to it, I'll watch it. But I haven't watched anything recently, so nothing's on the top of my head saying you that this is something you got to check out. So,
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, we really appreciate your time and
yeah,
appreciate you and your ministry. It's
thanks, Doug. Yeah,
yeah, glad things
I
are going well.
appreciate the opportunity just to kind of share my story a little bit, and appreciate Doug, you and Ryan just doing something like this to connect with people, and hopefully it can be an encouragement to other church leaders out there.
Yeah, absolutely. We hope so. Hope so too for sure.